Okay. Well, when I was modeling all this, somebody made the comment a while ago about labels, or maybe it was just to me personally, the different kind of labels that we put on students, and we do that. And one of the bad things about the diagnosis of learning disabilities is that a person takes it on as their identity. You know, I'm an ADDer, so I don't have to do anything, or something, or I have a learning disability, so I don't have to succeed in school, or something like that. And so when a parent brings a student to see me, and I'll say this and I hope you understand, I don't care what the diagnosis is because I want to know what their subjective experience is. And then I want to move them beyond that. What I do is teach them how to learn and teach them how to value school and things like this, which I'll give you a little bit of here in a little bit. But I want to figure out a way to get them to the point that they can use their mind successfuli in school or in their job or wherever they are, regardless what the diagnosis is. So I want to know, where did this stuff come from? Why are all these kids and all these adults that are out there that are having these symptoms? And here's what I found. And I want you just to recognize as we go down through this list, you have the skills to help them at every level. One of the first things that I found, probably the most common thing that I found, is stress and anxiety. Probably, I'll bet when you heard me talking about the symptoms of ADD, I mean, some of you went, my God, I do that. Well, you probably do that when you're highly stressed or when you have a bunch of anxiety in your life. And I do. I go into practically every one of those symptoms. And just think of the pressure cooker thing that I was talking about with the students. When we put pressure on them, and when we criticize them, when we treat them the way we treat them, when we malign them and do all sorts of things and call them names and make them feel weird, that just puts a lot of stress and anxiety on them and doesn't help the problem at all. What a trauma. This was surprising to me. I mean, my learning strategy is I muddled a lot. And so the way you use NLP is you step inside the experience of somebody, the subjective experience, and go, what's going on in here? And what I started finding originally was some trauma, but it was from the past. I mean, I would understand that if somebody was having trauma in their life right now, that would just send them into high stress and high anxiety. And I'd understand that. But what really surprised me was that some of these kids had medical stress, for example, that they've been traumatized by the medical profession maybe when they were 2 to 3 to 4 years of age. I mean, I remember the first one that I found was a little 12-year-old boy with ADHD that came in from Michigan, I think. And we were on a kind of a break, and I asked the mother, I said, when did this start? And she said, well, we had him diagnosed when he was 6, but actually he was real hyper before that. And I said, when? She said, well, back around 3 to 4. And I said, did anything significant happen to him at that time? And she thought for a minute, and she said, well, yeah, something did. And I said, what was it? She said, they thought that he had asthma. And so they gave him this medicine that they weren't supposed to give to children. And he would just sit in the chair, and he would be totally out of control. I mean, he'd just sit there and shake like this. And he'd say, Mom, I can't think, I can't control it. Now, what I do with something like that is that I go first person with that. I step into the experience of that and say, okay, here I am, I'm doing this. Now, what meaning do I attach to this? What are the issues here? What's the meaning? And the meaning that I attach to it is I'm out of control. And I started, once I heard that, because one of the things I found with ADD, I can't remember if I said this or not, is that they have a sense that their mind is out of control and they can't control it. So what happens is he was on this medicine for about 9 months. And finally they took him off of it and realized they weren't supposed to give him that medicine, but the imprint was already there. And so it became a self-fulfilling prophecy that that's the way he was going to act out. And again, with EFT, you guys can go back to that imprint and do something about that. And I started searching for other causes, like early trauma, like medical, and I found a bunch of them. I just really blew me away. And then the more I got into it, the more I realized that we were traumatizing them in our schools. I mean, you think of the things that we do, the way we grade, the way we give feedback to students, and there's all sorts of things that happen that cause them to raise their stress and anxiety and traumatize them. It actually gives them what we call in NLP, imprint experiences. And the imprint experiences changes their beliefs, and you have emotional baggage tied to it, and then they start living through that. and it just becomes an event in their life that it basically affects their life for the rest of their life. Candida, I'm sure everybody knows what candida is, but you can have these symptoms of ADD if you have candida. Candida is where you have the yeast disease, if you want to call it that. They used to think that only women had it, but I've had it, and when I had it, for example, I couldn't think. The time that I have it, I'd be up giving a workshop or a speech or something, and it's just like I'd just lose it. And I wasn't that old back then, but it's just like I'd stop in the middle of the sentence and wouldn't have any idea what I was saying. My son had it when he was in college, and he couldn't go to sleep at night because it got into his neurology, and it got into my neurology. And if it gets into the neurology, then it can create the symptoms of ADD. And to go to a good health food store or to eat right, change your diet, and do stuff like that, and to do some tapping on it will make that go away. Attitude. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later on, but our schools, bless their heart, never get around to teaching children how to learn in the classroom, how to learn the academic subjects. We have this major presupposition that our schools operate out of as a corporate body, that students already know how to learn in the classroom and from books and things like that, and therefore we don't have to teach them how to learn. So we give these academic tasks to the kids. We say, do it. If they say, I don't know how do I do this? We point a finger at them and say, don't be such a troublemaker. And we criticize them for doing that, which just creates more stress. But one of the things that I found that was the most traumatizing was the fact that we would give them these assignments to do, and they wouldn't know how to do them. They would do the best they could. They would create some learning strategy or something to see if it would work. And if they got any kind of help at all with it, then they'd just keep going back to the well and do it over and over again until it became their way of doing things. Simple little things like learning how to spell, how to learn your math facts, how to learn facts and how to memorize. I mean, the learning strategies that most students try to do with those basic survival skills is just inefficient and ineffective. Just doesn't work at all. I mean, as an example, you give somebody 10 spelling words and they learn them. And so you might say, well, write them down 10 times or 15 times or something like this. That's a learning activity. You don't know what happens in the brain. So what I did, one of the major things I did was realize that that was one of the things that was happening to our students, and started using NLP to go out and model out, what are effective learning strategies that are world class. I mean, what can a student do so that they can, in 1 week, I can turn a student around to making A's. They're making D's and F's on spelling tests, and in 1 week they'll go to making hundreds or making A's, just because they now have a way to do it that works really well. So the 5 basic, what I call survival strategies, are how to learn spelling words, how to learn math facts, how to memorize data, because that's basically what their academic life is like, and then how to learn vocabulary, how to learn terminology. I mean, that is such a major, major vacuum in the lives of students. The ways that they attempt to do that are so bad that it's really the number one reason why they can't read and comprehend what they read, because they don't have a good way to learn terminology. And then the other major strategy is our schools don't get around to teaching reading comprehension. I mean, I kept finding this, and I finally called a reading coordinator. I used to be on the school board, and I called the reading coordinator of the school and said, I can't remember how I was taught how to read and remember what I read. What do we do to reading comprehension? And she just there was one of these long, pregnant pauses, And she said, well, actually, we don't teach reading comprehension. We just assume it's going to be there, assume it's going to work. Well, if you don't know how to read and comprehend something, how are you going to do well in school? And so we put pressure on them, which raises the stress and anxiety. Then we start criticizing them because they're not doing well. And you know what? This starts occurring about the 4th grade. In the first 3 grades, for most schools, you are learning to read, learning how to sound out the words. 4th grade, they give you the science book, the sociology book, and said, now read this and learn. So you go from learning to read to reading to learn, and we don't give them a way to do it, right? So about 4th grade is where a lot of this trauma starts hitting. Now, they can have other trauma before that, but at the 4th grade, it's practically universal. I say 4th to 5th grade because it kind of slow catching on to some students, they start having trauma and start building up a lot of the symptoms of ADD and just being students that have trouble. So going in and teaching them how to learn, teaching them how to value school, teaching them how to think about school in a way that turns the motor on, kind of a lot of times turns the symptoms of ADD around because they don't have the stress and anxiety that goes with I don't know how to do it anymore. So I think EFT is just really good to get rid of that emotional baggage and change a tremendous amount of what's going on inside of them. But if you do that and you don't teach them how to learn, they'll re-traumatize themselves because they still don't know how to do what's being expected of them to do. The communication gap that I talked about, there's a VK loop, and if most of our schools are highly auditory, most of the communication that comes from parents is highly auditory, not all of it, but most of it is. And so whenever they start getting in trouble because they're not paying attention, they're forgetting things, they're not communicating, then it goes back to the stress and anxiety, which causes the symptoms of ADD to come up again. And that's a pretty simple one to teach, not only teach parents and teachers to become more visual or become more kinesthetic with their communication, but you can also teach the ADD students. You can take the resistance and the rebellion away from them with tapping, and then teach them what it's like to make their own pictures, so that when somebody's talking to them, they overlap it and they make visual images. That's redundant. They make images in their mind of the meaning of what the parents are telling them to do, and it solves that problem. And then the last one is the physical reaction. We've been talking about toxins and allergies and junk food and sweet and sugar and all those types of things, and that will cause the symptoms of ADD too. And you guys are well equipped to take care of that. In fact, I'd say I'd probably check out attitude first, but almost immediately, in the meantime, almost simultaneously, I'll be asking the parent about diet and stuff that's going on in the child, because that can occur. Any questions about that? About what I consider, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm an educator. But with NLP, this is what I found.
The basic skills that you talked about teaching, are those in your book, or how are those written down somewhere? How to do that?
Yes, my book has 3 major sections. It's first section is tips for students, and it's learning strategies. How to visualize. I want them to become visual learners, which fits these kids that have all these pictures flying around. I teach them, here's a spelling strategy, and I've taken all the fluff out of it. It's a handbook. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And then most of the major learning strategies that I've found and developed, they're in that first section. The middle section is tips for parents and teachers. And it's a lot about how this communication gap, how to get rapport, how to turn kids on to school, how to affect the attitude, how to shift their limiting beliefs and things like that. And then the last section is on ADD and learning disabilities.
Okay. So, is there tapping in the book?
Do I?
Do you talk about tapping in the book?
I didn't know tapping when I wrote that book, so I'll have to do a sequel to it, include EFT. Second book. Yeah, second book. I got one on the way.
Have you found any connection between vaccinations and ADD?
Vaccinations?
Yeah, childhood vaccinations.
Oh, I would imagine that goes right into that trauma slot right there. I don't know that I have a specific memory of something, but I would certainly, every time I watch on news or something, they're holding a baby down and giving them a shot, I go, how traumatic could that be? Yes.
Can you give more of a map of what you do exactly when somebody comes into you, like what the first session would be, second session, and all that? Do you have a questionnaire? Are you getting right down to work with the child right away, and do you just go through this list, and how exactly would you do it?
Sure. I understand I've only been doing EFT for about 2 to 3 years, so this is still coming into my realm. Basically, what I do is do an assessment. It takes about an hour. They come in, and I do an assessment of what are their learning strategies, what's their attitude, and I'm going to show you more about that here in a minute. I can tell a student within an hour if I can help them. Does the student have good learning strategies or not? Do they have trauma? Do they have emotional baggage, et cetera? And then if they want the program, I have a flat rate fee. It takes about 6 to 8 sessions for me to totally transform a student's life. And I'm working on the student from word go on attitude, on learning strategies, and if I find an emotional thing that's happening, then I will tap on it. If while I'm teaching them maybe the learning strategies, if hyperactivity, any of the ADD symptoms start getting in the way, I tap on those just to get them out of there. So I take as my basic framework, I'm going to teach them how to learn, because again, if they leave me without knowing how to learn, then they're just going to re-traumatize themselves again. The prevailing question that I have while I work through all the issues that come up and stuff like that is there anything in school that you have trouble doing? Is there anything in school that you don't like to do? Is there anything in school that you're slower than the other kids? You know, is there anything that you just basically can't do? And then I go in and I teach them how to do those things or do whatever I need to do to relieve that. When they can't come up with anything else, then they're through, basically. And that's how I know when I'm through. So it may be 6 to 8 sessions, but it's if it takes more than that, it takes more than that. I don't give a money back guarantee, but I guarantee that I will get them to that point. So now I want to shift you after this next question to a different model. To give you a way to think about how you can uncover aspects that to give you a perceptual template, if you will, for how to think about a student or how to think about somebody to uncover the aspects that you need to work with. So, yes.
I was just wondering if it's the same protocol for an adult with ADD as it is with the child, like the 6 to 8 sessions.
Yes, it is. What I do works the same at whatever age level I have. I've had grandparents, I've had graduate students, I've had adults in business, I've had all the way down to kindergarten, although that's a little young. Most times it's about 3rd grade and up that come to see me, but it works with all of them. Yeah.
Also, do you do it on the phone?
Haven't tried that yet because there's a lot of, when I'm teaching them how to learn, there's a lot of stuff that I want them to see. And so I have not thought about doing that on the phone.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just one question. I just want to ask if this is what you're saying. Are you saying that basically, according to your experience, ADD has its basic root in early stress as a child?
That's what I'm finding.
Okay.
And I know that doesn't fit with a lot of the medical profession. There's a lot of people that think it's genetic. There's a lot of people that think, the medical profession people probably think there's some medical or neurological reason that it's that way. But what I do is go with what can I do. And what I found was that in every one of them, they had the trauma. They have high stress whenever they're showing these symptoms up. And so I deal with what I need to deal with. Is the way I do it.
Okay, well, I don't know what it's like in Oklahoma, but in New Mexico, I know that 4th grade, which is when you said it sort of levels out to all kids having that stress, that's when state testing begins for our students.
Well, that's a good way to traumatize them.
Yes, it is.
Now,
Can I ask a quick question before you go on to that? Because I was going to ask it earlier. Can you comment on, is ADD on the rise as the perception is, or is it kind of like what we were talking about with sex abuse last night? It's just that it's becoming more publicly discussed and known about. What's your hit on that?
it's my impression that ADD and dyslexia are the vast dumping grounds for students that can't keep up or are having trouble in school. And so we put a label on them and throw them into this, learning LD classes and stuff like that. And it's my opinion, my experience, that yes, it is, the diagnosis of it is growing, is getting bigger and bigger. And of course, there's a whole bunch of controversy out there. There's a growing debate about Ritalin, but whether or not we should be using it or not, and that there's been books written about it being over-prescribed and things like that. There's a black market for Ritalin, so that the kid takes the Ritalin to school, and before he can turn it over to the school nurse, the other kids are buying it off of him or taking it off of him by force because it's speed, and they like the effect that it has. And so there's a lot of articles that come out about the effect of Ritalin and the overuse of it, the overdiagnosis. But yeah, I think it is. But that's just my opinion. I'm not quote unquote an expert, medical doctor or something like this, but it seems to me as though it is on the rise. And what I read in the papers and magazines and stuff like this is that it seems to be on the rise. Yeah. And we could go in a whole different direction, but a lot of times I get asked, is TV a cause for this? And I really believe that it is for the rise, for the increase in it, because television. I mean, think about the difference in the I'm not talking about the violent nature of the programs. I mean, that's another issue. Think about the difference in the way they do ads now. They're fast, they're moving, all these different pictures coming around. That's different ads than what you and I grew up on. And the ADD kids can probably keep up with that better than we can, because they can do multiple faceted things. They know how to work at several different levels at the same time. In fact, I was telling somebody at break, I have this one article that somebody sent me that says kids with ADD symptoms have this special gift. And, one of these days they will take over the world, because they will be the only ones that can process information in the multiple faceted way that we need in order to be able to, to handle everything that's out there in the world. But we got to get them through the system first, and teach them a way to survive the system and thrive in the system, in a way. This is what in NLP we refer to as the logical levels of experience. This is a major point that I want to make with you guys. Let me explain it a little bit before I start applying it to what we're talking about. Just let me explain logical levels of experience. And I'm going to start down here at the bottom. This is how we experience the world. And so one of the things that you will do with this later on is that you will use this as a template, or let's put this. What I do with this is that when a student comes in to see me, I put this logical level template over their conversation with me in order to find out at what level is the issue. Okay? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But it gives me a precise way to be able to go in and say, aha, I know exactly where I need to tap, or I know exactly what I need to do with them, because I've found out where the main issue is. It's in the handout too, if you want to. Should be in the last part of a new definition of ADD would be, it's also in the first article. Okay. Last few pages. But just go ahead, you don't have to read it, just listen to me. At the lowest level is the environment level. The environment level is the simplest level. It is the level about where, when, and with whom are you operating. It's your physical constraints. So right now, for example, you're in Flagstaff, you're at this hotel, you're in this particular room, whatever the name of it is, you're with other people that are interested in energy, and you're here from whatever the dates are, whatever the times are. And that's a fairly simple type of thing. Now, a lot of times we can make changes at the environment level and really have an effect. A lot of times I'll have parents call and say, my son is having trouble with the teacher, I think I'll change schools, or I think I'll change teachers. That's an environmental change. And it's a simple type of thing, too. And it doesn't always work. Above that is the behavior level. The behavior level is what actions or what behaviors do I engage in this environment. So right now, most of you are sitting there and you are, some of you taking notes, some of you look like you're thinking about what I'm saying, some of you are listening, but some of you are squirming in your seat, and some of you are very still. What I'm doing is standing up there waving my arms and talking a lot. At the capability level, by the way, we also make changes in people at the behavior level. Like a lot of students, maybe you have a student with a score card that is not too good, and so they'll say, well, you've been doing it at the dining room table, your homework, so we're going to shift you to your room. And you've been doing it for an hour every night, and now you're going to have to do it for 2 hours every night. And so we are we're shifting where in the environment they're doing it, but we're also telling them they're going to have to do their homework in a different way. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. Above that is the capability level. The capability level is what mental cognitive strategies do you use in order to do these behaviors in this environment. Now, I didn't know logical levels when I first started working with students, but there's a vacuum here in our schools. We do not teach them how to learn. We give them learning activities. We buy them books and we build them facilities and we give them a computer and things like this, but we do not teach them how their mind works and how to work, and that's what creates that stress and trauma. So that's why it's so very important in my model of what to do, is that we also have to be careful, besides the emotional issues that we can clear up, we have to fill this void. We have to teach them how to do what it is we're asking them to do at the mental level. It's a major, major catastrophe that we're not doing that with our kids. Above that are the beliefs and the values level. This is the why you do what you do. This is the motivational thing. This is where your criteria are, your standards. So one of the other vacuums that we have in our schools is that we do not teach schools how to value learning, how to value school, how to value good teachers, how to value doing homework, how to value math, how to value English. We just kind of leave it up to them, and we hope that they'll do it or not do it. And most of them, you ask a student, what is it about school that turns you on? They go, nothing. Why are you here? Well, I don't know. My parents make me come. And so there's, again, a vacuum there. And if we in the educational profession and don't come up with, here is a way to think about school that turns your motor on. Here's a way to think about school that allows you to give it meaning so that it will mean something to you in a positive way. If they don't have that there, then what happens is that it's like taking me taking a jigsaw puzzle, putting it out on the table, dumping the contents out on the table, scrambling all the pieces, but then doing this strange thing. I want to turn the pieces face down, and I'm going to take the box with the picture on it, and I'm going to stick it under the table. And I'm going to tell you, put it together. Now, a very difficult task, right? You wouldn't have any clue how the pieces came together. Well, that's what goes on with kids whenever they don't have a way to think about school or to think about math or to think about the different subjects. If you don't have a way to think about something so that you know how your mind, you can instruct your mind to organize it, then your mind goes into this funk. And it's going, why am I taking this? I don't know why I'm learning this. And so to give them a way to think about it in a way that empowers them, it is empowering. It gives meaning to what they're doing. So another major void there. By the way, one of the things that I do, and that article in your handout on beliefs with EFT and NLP, is I'm operating at this level with EFT. I have the belief, and I think I've been watching Gary do it, and I think I've been watching other people up here doing it, that you guys already do some of this. I know Gary goes after beliefs. I know he changes beliefs. And I think you can also install new empowering beliefs in people and replace the limiting beliefs that they already have. Above that is the identity level.
Don, sorry, could I ask a question about
Sure,
that
I'm
level
sorry, I didn't
before
see
you
it.
move on to the next one? And this is my own stuff, obviously. But when I was in high school, you took algebra, trigonometry, all that stuff, and I never actually did have a use for it. So sometimes when I tutor kids, they ask me, well, what am I ever going to use this for? And I can tell them, you're in this game that you got to play. You've got SATs coming up. But I can't always I think of applications for certain friends I know who went into certain professions, but I don't always have a good answer for that, honestly. I don't know why I need to know about cosines and, you know what I mean? I have that limiting belief myself, and they have to spend an inordinate amount of time with this. And, I was told when I was in school, it's mental exercise. That's what I was told.
That'll turn your motor on.
Yeah, it really thrilled me. So I just find that I don't know that I can be congruent with getting people turned on about trigonometry and calculus when, to me, in my own life, I really have done just fine without it. I taught fifth grade, and fifth grade math has gotten me through my life really well.
What I would do, see, is tap on the fact that you had that bad experience, and then I'd turn around and teach you how to do it. There is a way to do it. There is a way to teach them that, and there is a way to turn them on. And there is a way to explain math in a way that makes sense, that gives it meaning. You wouldn't believe how many adults I've had. I've had graduate students come to me, and they can't pass. I had this one graduate student, I'll talk about her specifically. She was trying to get her Master's of Business Administration, and she had to take this test that had a math portion on it with statistics or something like that. She couldn't pass it. I think she flunked it 2 or 3 times. And so she said, I've never been good at math. I don't understand it. I don't want to take it. You know, I took that MBA, and I didn't know that I had to take all that stuff. And so I said, well, this is what I think's going on. You know, nobody ever explained to her what math was the study of. And so she came in to see me, and so I took away all the baggage that she had and, you know, cleared all that stuff out. And I said, now let me tell you what math is the study of. And then let me give you a math strategy for how to learn math. And when I got through with her, within an hour, by the way, she went, nobody has ever explained it to me like that. Where were you when I needed you? You know, and that happens a lot, because when you know that you need to fill this void here and you've come up with a strategy for how to do it, basically it turns into a twofold deal. They've got emotional baggage that they've had because they've been traumatized in the past. You clear that out, but then you go right in, come up with, you know, strategies or how to value it or whatever you need to, what they need to be able to thrive in that environment. And you can either tap that in or just teach it to them.
So is that in your book? Am I going to find out why?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's
I'm
there.
still wondering why. Why is it important?
Well, I would tell you, but I don't have time to tell you everything.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
So, okay. Yes.
I was just going to say, I recently read in the paper that a very large school district somewhere, I'm not sure where, decided that math was the key, algebra was the key for helping kids to be able to get into college. And so they started teaching algebra earlier than they ever had and emphasizing it. And so that's one answer is, hey, you may never use math in your work, but if you want to get into college, you need to tackle it.
And does that really turn them on too?
Well, that's reality.
That's not a big turn on either. What you want when you, excuse me, what you want to do when you turn somebody on to school, usually you're trying to turn them on to like doing their homework or something like that, right? And the way you turn them on is that you you find out what some of their criteria are at this level, what's important to them, and then you show how this is going to satisfy their criteria. As soon as you make that connection between the two, their motor turns on. You wouldn't believe the number of student athletes that I have. They're highly motivated on the playing field, walk into a classroom and they go brain dead, right? Because they change their learning strategies and things like that. Once I go over here to school, and I have a way that I've developed that's in my book on how to elicit what their criteria are, and you elicit their criteria for doing sports well, then you just transfer it right back over into math or school and say, this is how to make school meaningful to you. And it works just like that. Somebody said this, I don't know if it was last night or when, everybody's running together now. I'm not teaching them anything, basically. I am bringing resources from one area to another area that they don't have those resources. Is the way I think about what I do. I'm not changing anybody, I'm just relieving some of the emotional baggage that they have, giving them a chance, if you will, to learn something in a way that is world class. One more question,
Real
and then I
quickly.
need to move on.
Real quickly, it seems, well, just my own gut says that this has been a universal experience. I know it has been for me. I still don't understand calculus. I still don't understand trigonometry. I don't care. I haven't used it in the last 50 years. I don't expect to use it in the next 50.
Right.
So, but I think that's true of almost everybody that attended high school. And what I'm trying to find out is, can you give us an example? I understand you don't have enough time to go through all of the explanation, but can you give us an example of how you can make that palatable to a child? What can I do to teach a child that this is going to be palatable? Besides telling them that's a cockamamie thing that they're going to be getting into college better so they can learn a higher form of useless information.
Again, I find out what their criteria are, what their standards are, and there's a whole system that I can't go into here about how I do that, and a lot of it is in the language pattern. We talked about NLP, about being, modeling technology, but the beautiful thing about NLP is the language that you learn. I've been modeling Gary while he's up here doing tapping on people, and I would love to share with you what I found out about him and why his tapping works so well. I may share just a little bit with him, but about math. Would it not suffice to say it's in my book, or you can go to my website, and I think and find it there, because I really need to move on. Okay. Or come up and ask me on a break or something. I'll be happy to share with you that, if that's okay. Okay, so we're at beliefs and value level. Above that is the identity level, who I am. This is where self-esteem, self-concept comes in. Somebody with ADD, for example, has issues at all of these levels. In the books, most of these symptoms are at the behavior level. The environment, a lot of times, like the schoolroom or maybe a hectic time at home, is what triggers a lot of the deal. But they feel as though they can't learn, so they have problems here too. They believe after a while that they can't learn. They believe that school is a mess. They believe that school is boring, and so they have problems here too. Then they start believing that they're weird, or that something's wrong with them, which means they're taking it right to the identity level. So they have a belief at the identity level that says, I'm different, I'm weird, I'm unusual, nobody likes me, things like that, I don't belong. And those are all beliefs at this level. And then the level above that is what we call the spiritual level, or the greater system level. We all belong to greater systems. We belong to a family, we belong to a school or an organization, we belong to a business, or we belong to a state, or in a nation, or a universe. And this is about who else are we serving with what we do. What does what you do, who does what you do serve besides yourself? And if you can plug that into a higher vision, which is up here, higher mission in your life to serve other people, what somebody you're talking about, then it kind of ties everything together. And it gives meaning to what you do that's outside of who you are, which is a greater meaning to have. Okay? Now let me make it. We have 30 minutes left. Can you hold out? Okay. If you need to, just feel free to get up and move around, or stand up, or go do your thing, or whatever. Now, what Gary does, one of the things that Gary does whenever he's tapping on people, is that he'll sit there and, his what would you call that chain of things that he says? There ought to be a word for that. Stream of consciousness, that's one way to say it, that he's sitting there tapping on. If you'll sit there and watch it, he is sitting there giving things through the logical levels. I don't know if he knows he's doing this or not, but he'll come up with something, and maybe at the capability, even though I don't know how to do this, blah, 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 and then he'll go in, and he will actually, when he starts the tapping up here, he'll do the on the even though stuff, when he's doing this or doing this, he's actually pacing the problem. And then a lot of times when he goes to the tapping, he's actually going up to sometimes the negative or the limiting beliefs that may be here, or issues that may be here, and then sometimes he throws in a positive one when he's doing that. Which, in my experience, what happens is that if you clear out like a limiting belief, and we can have beliefs at all of these things, but if you clear out a limiting belief, the mind is like a vacuum, because if you change a belief here, all of this changes. If you change a belief down here, then you still got limiting beliefs above that are going to make them come back, because these control the ones that are below. So if you clear it out, let's say, for example, let's just give you an example. Let's suppose that I have recognized that a student does not know how to learn. And they're real frustrated by it. They're just totally frustrated by the school system. They don't like to do home. They don't like to do anything. So one of the things that I do is I go in and I clear out that frustration, or clear out that feeling of overwhelmed or confused or whatever it is. Then I will start saying things to them like this. You know, the reason that you've been having trouble in school is because nobody has ever got around to teaching you how to learn in school in a way that works really well. And I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do that in such a way that you can learn to value school so that it means something to you, it can be of value to you, that you can believe in yourself and believe in the worthwhileness of school, so that you can be the kind of student that you were meant to be, that you were born to be, the kind of student that you probably at the unconscious level always wanted to be, so that you can serve your family and your peers, maybe even help your peers because they don't know how to learn either. And so I will sit there and I will talk to them up and down the logical levels, and what that's doing is installing in them, if you will, new ways to think about school, new ways to think about homework, new ways to think about themselves through all the logical levels, which is a complete transformation. Because when you do partial things, like maybe you work on a behavior down here, they still got stuff up here that they'll have to come back to you for. So in some of the sessions we've had, we've talked about, you know, people coming back or not. In my experience, if you can assist them in changing their beliefs at all these levels, then you've just transformed their lives, and they have become, they now are in charge of their own experience. Because they have everything they need. They know how to do what it is that they need to do. They know how to value it, think about it. They're a different kind of person now, and they know who it serves outside of themselves. It is a transforming experience. Now, I've never tried this, but I just had an idea. If while I'm doing this talk that I did, you know, now I'm going to teach you how to learn so that you be confident in the fact that you can learn, and now you learn how to value. If we were tapping on them while I was running them up and down that, I think it would work, and I think that's what Gary does. I don't know if he consciously has this guide, but I would suggest to you, I know you guys are exceptionally intuitive, but I'd suggest to you that this is a way that you can either say, keep track of where you're going, or you can use your intuitiveness and then come back and check and say, okay, did I miss any level? And then go in there and work on those particular levels that you might have missed. Does this make any sense, by the way? Okay. Okay, I'm ready for questions now. Yes?
Just a comment. As a corporate trainer, being NLP-based, design human engineering, and human performance engineering-based, our basic concept in doing this, where we shoot first is the higher levels, since they control everything below it.
Right.
You won't be changing many beliefs if you're attacking the identity level, then the beliefs, values, the capabilities, behaviors, environment all change.
That's right.
So it's a lot quicker, and that's
Absolutely.
one of the values of EFT, because if you're going up if you'll notice when the cognitive change takes place, when they finally understand that they deeply and completely accept themselves, which is where? Identity, okay? Everything below that falls into line.
Yeah, even though I have these problems, I totally, deeply, and completely accept myself, takes it right to this level. It's one of the reasons, in my humble opinion, that reversal works so well, is that you're taking everything down here and saying, this doesn't really matter because I'm okay, right here.
How does dyslexia figure into ADD? Or would you change your method of modality if you're dealing with a child or an adult who is both dyslexic and then manifests ADD as well?
To me, they're two different horses.
They are.
Yeah. And to me, they're, again, both major dumping grounds for students that they're having trouble with. And so
I know,
we just kind of,
I'm dyslexic.
so we just kind of put a label on them, and once we have a label, we can get federal funding and all sorts of stuff, you know. I've actually had people that at schools and parents that refuse to allow their sons to take my training because they know that they will not be able to get funds for them anymore. It's really a major catastrophe, but yes.
So do you use kind of this to do your assessment off of too?
Yes, I do.
Basically, you go through that and identify all these areas with the child, and then you can go back and switch those around with them.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the way that I operate basically is when they come in for the assessment, I am saying, well, tell me what your school experience is like. And when they're telling me what it's like, I have the parent there. For anybody that's high school or below, I always require a parent, at least one parent, to be there. And so I get two different perspectives on what's going on from both the child and from the parent. Sometimes I don't get much from the child. It lets me see the dynamics that goes on between the two parents. And then once I hear some of it, usually it's already come out that, well, they don't like school, or which is at this level, or they think they're not any good, they're not a good student at this level, or they're just not doing well in school at all. And so then I start giving them tasks to do. And the very first thing that I do is start them off with a spelling word. First thing I want to know is, can they visualize? Because in my opinion, our learning stylists have it wrong. You cannot survive school being a kinesthetic learner, in my opinion. You cannot survive school, or you can survive school. I'm sorry, you can survive, you cannot thrive. And you'll struggle in school if you're a kinesthetic learner, which means if you have to have hands-on. The academic subjects just are not suited for hands-on stuff. You have trouble in school and you work harder than anybody else if you're an auditory learner. An auditory learner is somebody that likes to repeat things over and over again, or likes to discuss things. A spelling word will be, like school, S-C-H-O-O-L, school, S-C-H-O-O-L. They'll say it over and over again. That's auditory learning. What I found, and I used to go around and teach teachers how to figure out if somebody was a visual or an auditory or kinesthetic. And what I found just by muddling through, and the students that would come into my office, was I'll always have this question. If they say they're having trouble reading, I say, well, is there anything that they read and they enjoy? And usually there is something. Even if it's a skateboarding magazine or something like that. I say, bring a skateboarding magazine and bring their history book or whatever they're having trouble reading. And then I will take the student, give them the history book, let's say, and say, read this for me. And within 15 seconds, I can tell you, using NLP, I can tell you what their reading strategy is, what they attempt to do to take the words off the printed page, get them inside, and if it's successful or not. And then I hand them the skateboarding magazine and say, read this article, and ask them if they've read it before, and if they haven't, I say, read this, and they read it differently. And again, I can elicit that reading strategy within just a few seconds. And basically what I do is then and what they do with the skateboarding magazine is they read it visually. What they do with the science or the history book is they just sound the words out, and nothing sticks in here, which goes to a lot of terminology. But that's what they were taught to do. Prior to the 4th grade, they were taught to sound out words. They weren't taught that now that you know how to sound the words out, here's what to do with those words when they hit your brain. And that's what I teach them how to do. Okay?
So I should phonetically spell phonics, right?
I'm sorry? Yeah, right.
I should phonetically spell phonics, right?
Yeah, you can't spell all the words in the English language according to how they sound. Yeah, you can only spell all the words in the English language according to how they look. So if you don't teach them how to visualize, then you're going to have to teach them a system that's just really hard and messy and stuff like that. Like it has a lot of rules, like I before E except after C, things like that. Right.
I've always thought it really funny that we can't spell phonics phonically.
It's because it doesn't look like it sounds.
Right.
That's the reason.
What I wanted to mention earlier was someone made a statement which is a societal programmed belief, and what they stated was they took a capability and said it was their identity. I am dyslexic is not true.
That's exactly right.
So therefore, there's something to work on right there.
That's exactly right, and one of the reasons I don't like labels like ADD and dyslexia is because that's what a student will do, is that they'll take what they're doing down here and they take it right to this level right here. When it goes to this level right here, it's a lot harder to solve, a lot harder to deal with. This is also what happens, by the way, when you have a kid that's having trouble in school and the parents start getting on to him. And the parents may be very well-intentioned, or the teacher may be very well-intentioned that they're trying to help the kid do better on the next test. But what the kid will do is that they'll take this feedback, which we need, by the way, to be able to correct ourselves and learn and develop and stuff like that. They'll take that feedback and go right up here and say, what's wrong with me that he's talking to me that way? and they take it up here and make an identity issue out of it. So that's why I've done a lot of work with what is a better feedback model that we can work with so that those kids don't do that, or that we have a way to help them build their self-esteem rather than tear it down. I see, he was up a long time ago.
Don, I was a little late getting here, but I've got some adult clients who've really benefited from Ritalin, and you seem to be saying that you don't really see a place for medication. I'm with you with children. I like what you're doing. It makes a whole lot of sense to me. But what about adults?
Oh, there are people out there that thrive with Ritalin. So if I said that's not so.
Okay.
And if that's what I say is that, man, if it works for you, and if you like to take drugs, go for it.
And I hope you will comment a little more about adult ADD and your treatment of it. That's what I'm primarily. That would help me the most right now. So before we're done, if you could do that, I'd appreciate it.
I work. Okay, I'll say that right now, because what I do with adults is exactly the same thing that I do with kids. I mean, there's not any.
Well, we're not talking about school, and we're not talking about learning subjects in math and trigonometry and things. I guess I'm having a trouble. Maybe I'm dyslexic. But
Let me ask this question. No. If they come to see me because they think they're ADD or they're having trouble, then that means that somebody is laying a trip on them somewhere.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
my question is, what is it that this is causing you difficulty with? So if it's learning at work, or if it's doing the task at work or something like this, then that's what I teach them how to do, or figure out what I need to teach them how to do, and then work with their beliefs around that. So it's like what's happening in their life that's causing them trouble.
Teaching them how to learn, for example, that'd be a whole different thing than you have in your book, I'm sure.
Say that again?
Teaching children how to learn in school is a lot different from teaching adults how to learn at an adult level when they're trying to overcome ADD, is it not?
No. It's learning strategies.
Okay.
It's
And that's in your book too?
Yeah, I don't even think age level when I work with
Okay.
somebody.
All right.
It doesn't process that way with me.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You bet.
When you were speaking about visualizing in reading, were you talking about visualizing the printed word or the object that the word describes, the action as such?
Good question. Did y'all hear it? Okay. I don't want them to visualize the word. There are people out there that can do this. They have a printed page inside their mind. I don't want them to do that because that's not what learning is supposed to be about. Learning is supposed to be about having experiences. Having experiences at the subjective experience level, like visual images or sounds and feelings and smells and tastes and things like that. And what happens, the reason a lot of people have trouble in school with reading is because the way they learn new terminology or vocabulary. The number one way that people attempt to learn vocabulary words or definitions is that they'll say the word and they'll repeat the definition. They'll say the word and read the definition, say the word, repeat the definition over and over again. Is this auditory or is this auditory? And is there any subjective experience attached to this? Are there any images attached to it? Are there any sounds attached to it? Or any feelings attached to it? No, it's just a pile of words. So I found this, and I found that after the 4th grade, the kids, in the first few grades, the kids would visualize because the books had a lot of pictures in it, and the books were about things that they already had experience of, like a dog chasing a cat. Well, they have a dog, they have a cat maybe, and they know what a dog looks like, smells like, feels like, probably even tastes like. And so when they say the word dog, they get all this subjective experience. They hit the 4th grade and they want to learn about Constitution. They don't have any subjective experience of the word Constitution. So when they go through there and read it, they know how to enunciate it. But when they enunciate it, nothing happens in here at the visual level or feeling level or anything like that. So I had to create a vocabulary strategy, if you will, that would give them some subjective experience. So my vocabulary strategy, which is in the book, says when you read the definition, a new definition, you read it, and then what would that look like? What is the meaning of that? What would the meaning of that definition look like in your mind? And then they come up with a picture of it, and then they put the word that they are defining in that picture. And then they say the word, and then they describe the picture. They don't put any more words in there. They describe what does that look like. And what that does when they say the word and they describe it, while they're looking at the picture, that hooks the sound of the word to the visual representation of the meaning of the word. So that later on when they're reading, as they're sounding the words out, pictures are popping into their head. Okay? And that's what I want to happen to those pictures. They can have feelings about it too if they want to. But that's getting real precise about what has to happen in the mind in order for reading comprehension to occur. I mean, that if there's anything that I think I have added to the world, it's that I've found this void here and then used NLP to come up with what I consider to be world-class learning strategies that just work really, really well, and they're really neat, and the kids like them and stuff like this, but it does primarily require them to be visual. Because if I'm going to take on the responsibility of teaching kids how to learn in the classroom, I do not want to teach them strategies that don't work very well. I want to teach them strategies that are world-class that will help them not only survive but thrive. And visual learning is what works really well. If I get somebody that's highly kinesthetic or highly auditory, then I just back off, and I may do a lot of tapping on that stuff, whatever is there, the issues that are there behind that, but I will teach them how to visualize. I have not found anybody yet that I have not been able to teach how to visualize. And once they learn how to visualize, then they can, as they practice these strategies, these visual strategies become the new strategies. And it becomes a habit, becomes the new neurological programs that they operate out of. Yes?
Don, in addition to academic deficits, when I'm talking to a teacher or a parent, I'm also hearing poor social skills. And this shows up often outside the classroom, on the playground, or on the ball field, away from school. Do you have any other comments about that, please?
Yeah. Once I have recognized that with somebody with ADD that I have to basically work at all levels with this. The social skills, the behaviors, I mean, they turn their friends off, and they come across as weird to their friends. And the place that I enter when I'm working with somebody that has ADD symptom is at the capability level. First thing I want to know is, can they control their mind? Can they control those pictures in there or not? If they can control those pictures, then they don't have what I consider to be ADD. They may have some ADD symptoms that come out of stress and anxiety, but they don't have ADD because they can control their mind. If they can control their pictures, then I can immediately go to teach them how to learn, and then teaching them how to value learning and just move and change beliefs and all sorts of things. If they can't control the pictures in their mind, then I back off and I teach them how to control their mind. And if they can't control their mind, most of them have a tremendous amount of anxiety about that. Some of them are terrified. Some of them feel overwhelmed. Overwhelmed is just a real good feeling because those pictures are moving so fast that they can't keep up with them. You can tap on all those things, clear that stuff out, give them a break, and then you teach them how to control the mind. You can, a lot of times, if you will clear out what I call the emotional baggage about that, a lot of times everything will slow down because it's the stress and anxiety that's been driving it, that comes out of the fact that they haven't been able to do it before. If that still doesn't, if that still doesn't clear it out, then I start looking for issues, or I start looking for maybe an imprint experience. Give you an example of one. I had this 75-year-old woman that kept coming to my classes, and she said, "I can't make pictures. You talk about making pictures. I can't make pictures, and I want to start a new career." And I want a 10-year plan. And I want to be able to see it vividly so I can go get it. And I did some of the standard stuff with her, and nothing worked. And I had some NLP trainers that came in and worked with her. Nothing worked. We couldn't get her to have images. And then one of my students was working with her, and he decided to go back and see if he could find an imprint. And so he did an age regression. And and the deal is, I want you to, and we do a lot of physical stuff. We'll have a timeline. So we lay out a timeline on the floor, and then you get into the fact that I can't see, and you start walking back through your line, and you get to the point that, I can make pictures. And then you want to know, well, what happened right here that caused the shift, and that's your imprint. That's the issue that you need to tap on or work on. At that time, I wasn't into tapping, so we did standard NLP. What we found, or what my student found, was that when she was a little girl, 8 years old, in 1 month, she had 3 major women figures in her life die. Just bang, bang, bang. One of them was a favorite grandmother of hers. Another one was a favorite aunt, and I can't remember what the other one was. When her grandmother was about to to have the funeral for the grandmother. She was at the house before they left for the funeral home. And she heard her mother say, and this is the power of the unconscious mind. She heard her mother say, whatever we do, we can't let little Sally see them put Granny in the ground. And she shut down her picture making just immediately. Once we recognize that imprint experience, we could go in and do what we call an imprinting, a re-imprinting on it, and all of a sudden she's able to visualize. And that's just an example of a way to say, you know, she's got a belief up there, because imprints will generate beliefs. And if we can find out what that precise thing is and go in and deal with that, then a lot of times, like somebody was saying, once we change something up here, everything else falls out. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other? Surely, we're out of questions. I have one little gift I want to give you all, as far as something that y'all can do with your people when you're about, you say, okay, I think we've about done everything. I want to show you a way to use the logical levels to integrate everything that you've done through the logical levels. It's just really a magnificent transforming event that you can do with them. So she was first back there.
When I work with ADD and ADHD and learning disabilities, what I found is working with the parent at the same time is really important, giving the parent some strategies to be able to take back to the teacher, and giving the student power in later years to take responsibility for his own learning, I think is very important. And having that inner sense of power, which everything you're saying is what you're giving them. You're taking the powerlessness away. I want to add one comment to that I have an adult client, ADD, a genius in programming, with a lot of things in the field coming at him because he's so good at what he does. And he shut down because it was coming too fast, and his way of shutting down was to curl up in the basement in major depression. Yeah. And so there is a lot to do in this, and your strategy's perfect, and it does work. I mean, I will attest to that. I've been on your website. I've been using a lot of this, and it's beautiful, it works, and it flows. And kids immediately start to feel their power in first or second session, and there's a light that comes on.
Thank you. Well, you see if you can surpass that.
All right, I'll sit down. I just have a quick question in terms of, I work in the school system, and in our district there are many children who are very impoverished. Also bilingual is a major issue. So would you just sort of address, have you used this with bilingual children, economic level, and intellectual level?
Intellectual level?
Meaning, have you used it with retarded children, lower level children? Because we work with all levels.
I have used it with retarded children. I've used it with students that have been had severe head trauma. I don't, one of the limitations of what I do is that I don't have an opportunity to work with kids that are impoverished, because I need to make a living, and they can't pay me, and I haven't figured a way to give it away, although Gary came up with some good ideas this morning. So I charge for what I do. So I don't have a heck of a lot to say about that, and that's just one of the limitations of my experience, is that I have not had that. I'm in the process of training Joy trainers. I have a 14-day certification program every summer, and training people on what I do. And people come in from all over the world to take this, and so I'm trying to put out, those, what George Bush called those points of light that are out there in the world. And I think you guys will add to that, because this tidal wave that I think you guys will do will just be really significant. Let me say one more thing that I just think is a wonderful thing that you guys can add to your repertoire. Once you've cleared everybody, once you've taught them how to learn, whenever you've done what you do, what I do is I will have 6 pieces of paper, and I'll have a piece of paper that may have spiritual greater system written on it. Another one has identity written on it, et cetera. And I'll lay those out on the floor. And then I'll have to do a lot of explaining to the kids about how this works, but that's okay, because I just get to work on their mind a little bit more with my language. But have them standing in the environment level. And let's suppose that somebody now is saying, well, I want to be all that I could be. And maybe that's a major belief that we've got to up here. So I have them step into the environment level, and I say, okay, Johnny, so as a person that wants to be all they can be, where, when, and with whom will you be all that you can be? And I get them physiologically into it. I want them to gesture. I want them to go rah-rah and all this. And they'll generally say something, well, in the classroom and at home with my parents and with my friends, I'm going to teach my friends all these learning strategies. And, I want them to just let it come out, because that's getting into their neurology, and that's what I'm wanting. This is an integration exercise. Then I step them into the behavior level and say, in order to be all that you can be, what behaviors will you engage in back in the school and back with your parents and with your peers? And just let them elaborate. Then move them up the capability level to be all that you can be. What mental strategies you're going to use, what cognitive ways, how are you going to think, what are you going to do with your mind so that you can do these behaviors in this environment. And let them elaborate. Remind them that you've taught them how to learn, and remind them that they now know how to learn. Remind them that they don't have any stuck states, if you will. Then move them up into values and beliefs. As a person that wants to be all they can be, what now do you value? What do you value differently? What do you believe differently? What would it be good for you to value? What would be good for you to believe that's different? What beliefs can you obtain that will help you be all that you can be, so that you can use these mental capabilities and do these behaviors in this environment? Then you move them up to the identity level and go, what kind of person are you that would value this way, that would have these capabilities, do these behaviors in this environment? What kind of person does that? And then move them up to the spiritual greater system. Who else is this going to serve that you would be this? And I like them to go metaphorical here if they can. What is the greater vision that you have that being all that you can be is going to serve? And they elaborate on that. Then I turn them around, and maybe they want to serve the world. Now they started off real, down there, that was real nitty-gritty. Now they're global. And in order to serve the world and to serve the people of the world, what kind of person will you need to be to serve the world? What beliefs and values do you need and do you have that will help you serve the world and make the world a better place, which is mine? What capabilities do you need or do you have that you can bring to bear so that you can serve the world? And again, I do this, and then I just let them talk, because I want it to come out of them. Go to the behavior level. What behaviors will you engage in now to serve the world, to make it a better place? Where will you do this? And again, let them elaborate. What that does is integrate everything that you've done through the whole physiologically, neurologically, mentally, emotionally, through all the logical levels. There's nothing. You don't leave any gaps there. You don't hope they go home and come up with this realization. You're helping them get it right there. And sometimes I have to make suggestions to them. I don't tell them. I say, well, you could be this kind of person, and if they like it, then they grab it. If they don't, they turn it away. Does that make sense? I just thank you guys so much. It's been an honor to be here. Thank you.